Us today. It's a great honor to have him here at the parish. We're a very small parish, and so we feel honored that he chose to come and to be with us for the Pontifical Mass and for his talk. I would also like to thank all of those who are here as visitors, maybe as first-time visitors, hopefully not only-time visitors, but who are here today for the Mass and for this talk. And I would like to just, without too much ado then, to introduce His Excellency and allow him to speak to you. He comes from, well, a very impressive background and is been traveling quite a bit throughout the U.S., South America, various places over the past several years, and really trying to, again, spark the faith, which in so many places has become just an ember. So without further ado, His Excellency Bishop Athanasius Schneider.
Dear Father Pendergast, thank you very much for your invitation to come here to your parish and for your kind words. I greet you all, my dear brothers and sisters. When I saw today in the Mass all of you, especially the families and the children, the young people, I was thinking to change the topic of my talk to you. So I will speak about family. So the family as the original place of the beauty of the Catholic faith. The family has been created immediately by God. So the Church teaches us, marriage has God for his author. And marriage was from the very beginning a kind of foreshadowing of the incarnation of his Son. And therefore, there abides in it something holy and religious. The family, therefore, holds directly from the Creator the mission, and hence the right to educate the children, a right inalienable because inseparably joined to the strict obligation, a right of the parents to educate the children is anterior to any right whatever in civil society and of the state. And therefore, these rights of the parents are inviolable on the part of any power on earth. The common sense of mankind is in such complete accord, teaches us Pope Leo XIII, that they would be in open contradiction with it who dared maintain that the children belong to the state before they belong to the family. Untenable is the reason they adduce, namely, that man is born a citizen and hence belongs primarily to the state. But they are not bearing in mind that before being a citizen, man must exist. And existence does not come from the state, from the Creator, and then from the parents who give life as collaborators of God. The children are something of the parents, and therefore they have the first right to educate the children. And therefore, the power of the parents is of such a nature that it cannot be destroyed or absorbed by the state, for it has the same origin as human life itself. By nature, parents have a right to the education of their children. Therefore, it is the duty of the parents to make every effort to prevent any invasion in their rights of the education, and to make absolutely sure that the education of the children remain under their own control, in keeping with their Christian duty, and above all, to refuse to send the children to those schools in which there is a danger for the faith. Already more than 70 years ago, Pope Pius XII made an appeal to the Christian families to be a kind of new crusaders in spreading and defending the true Catholic faith in midst of the general and heavy torpor into which the drugs of the false ideas which widely are diffused have sunk the human family in the 20th century. These diagnoses which Pius XII made about the spiritual health of his time is fully applicable to our times, and it became even more worse. It became even much worse. Pius XII said, I quote, "It is for the best and most distinguished members of the Christian family, filled with the enthusiasm of crusaders, to unite in the spirit of truth, justice, and love to the call God wills it, ready to serve, to sacrifice themselves like the crusaders of old, if the issue was then the liberation of the land hallowed by the life of the incarnate Word of God. The call today is, if we may so express ourselves, to traverse the sea of errors of our days and to march on to free the holy land of the Spirit, which is destined to sustain in its foundations the unchangeable norms and laws on which will rise a new social construction and solid society united by the faith." So Pius XII. The first and most holy goal and end of marriage and family consists in giving birth of new citizens of heaven. By the command of Christ, it not only looks to the propagation of the human race, family, but to bring forth of children for the church, to bring forth fellow citizens with the saints and domestics of God, as St. Paul says in the Ephesians 2:19. The family is therefore the first and original place where the integrity and the beauty of the Catholic faith should be taught to the children, and by this way handed over to the future generations. Indeed, from this transmission of the faith depends the spiritual health of a nation. The family is holy. It is the cradle not only for the children, but for the entire nation. Men and women should pass on the torch of the physical, but also of the spiritual life, of the moral life, of the Christian life, to the future generations. From the early centuries of Christianity, the family was seen as the church in miniature, a little church, or it was called the family of God. And then it was called also the domestic church. And this old Christian truth was, the Vatican Council reminded this to us. In the Constitution Lumen Gentium, the Council teaches the family is, so to speak, the domestic church. In it, parents should, by their own word and example, be the first preachers of the faith to their children. Parents should encourage them in the vocation which is proper to each of them. And Pope John Paul II, the Pope of the family, made this famous affirmation, I quote him: "In the future, evangelization will depend largely on the domestic church, on family." The evangelization itself will depend largely on the family. And the same Pope said, even the future of all humanity passes by the way of the family. So great and splendid is the educational ministry of the Christian parents that St. Thomas Aquinas had no hesitation in comparing it with the ministry of priests. I quote St. Thomas: "Some only propagate and guard spiritual life by spiritual ministry, and this is the role of the sacrament of orders of the priesthood. Others do this for both corporal and spiritual life, and this is brought about by the sacrament of marriage, by which a man and a woman join in order to beget offspring and bring them up to worship God." So Thomas Aquinas. John Paul II gave to the catechesis in family the priority over all other forms of catechesis. I quote John Paul II: "Family catechesis precedes, accompanies, and enriches all other forms of catechesis." So I repeat this, very important. Family catechesis, given in family, precedes and accompanies and enriches all other forms of catechesis. Furthermore, in places where anti-religious legislation endeavors even to prevent education in the faith, and in places where widespread unbelief or invasive secularism makes real religious growth practically impossible, the family as the domestic church remains the only one place where children and young people can receive an authentic catechesis. Thus, there cannot be too great an effort on the part of Christian parents to prepare for this ministry of being catechists of their children, and to carry it out with tireless zeal. So the words of John Paul II. One of the main causes of the moral, spiritual, and religious crisis of the current time consists in religious ignorance, in ignoring the truth of the faith, and in an erroneous knowledge of the faith. St. Pius X very rightly observed the disconnection of the ignorance. I quote him: "The enemy has indeed long been prowling about the fault and attacking it with such subtle cunning that now, more than ever before, the prediction of the apostle to the elders of the church of Ephesus seems to be verified. I know that fierce wolves will get in among you and will not spare the flock. Those who still are zealous for the glory of God are seeking the causes and reasons for this decline in religion in our days. Coming to a different explanation, each points out, according to his own view, a different plan for the protection and restoration of the kingdom of God on earth. But it seems to us that while we should not overlook other considerations, we are forced to agree with those who hold that the chief cause of the present indifference and, as it were, infirmity of soul and the serious evils that result from it is to be found above all in ignorance of things divine. This is fully in accord with what God himself declared through the prophet Hosea, and there is no knowledge of God in the land. So, Pius X. And Pope Benedict XIV, already in the 18th century, wrote, I quote him, "We declare that a great number of those who are condemned to eternal punishment suffer that everlasting calamity because of ignorance of those mysteries of faith which must be known and believed in order to be numbered among the elect. This ignorance who is responsible for this condemnation also. And for this reason, the same Pope said, there is nothing more effective than catechetical instruction to spread the glory of God and to secure the salvation of souls." I repeat, this word is very important. There is nothing more effective than the catechetical instruction to spread the glory of God and to secure the salvation of souls. The beauty of the Catholic faith manifests itself in a special manner in large families. We possess one of the most striking and illuminating affirmations of the Magisterium on this theme. Pope Pius XII addressed to the Association of Large Families the following words. I quote him. Exactly, he pronounced these words 60 years ago. I quote him. "Large families are the most splendid flower beds in the garden of the church. The brows of the fathers and mothers may be burdened with cares, but there is never a trace of that inner shadow that betrays anxiety of conscience or fear of an irreparable return to loneliness. Their youth never seems to fade away. a large family, the youth of a large family, never seems to fade away. As long as the sweet fragrance of a crib remains in the home. As long as the walls of the house echo to the silvery voices of children and grandchildren. Their heavy labors multiplied many times over, their redoubled sacrifices and their renunciation of costly amusements are generously rewarded, even here below, by the inexhaustible treasury of affection and tender hopes that dwell in their hearts without ever tiring them or bothering them. And the hopes soon become a reality when the eldest daughter begins to help her mother to take care of the baby. And on the day the oldest son comes home with his face beaming with the first salary he has earned himself. Children in large families learn almost automatically to be careful of what they do and to assume responsibility, to have a respect for each other and to help each other, to be open-hearted and generous. For them, the family is a little proving ground before they move into the world outside, which will be harder on them and more demanding. So Pope Pius XII, his words directed to the large families. In 58 he spoke this. The beauty of the Catholic faith manifests itself precisely the family, which is the first breeding ground and the first seed bed for the priestly vocations. The Second Vatican Council spoke about the family as the first seminary in the process of fostering and training priestly vocations. History has given proof that the majority of priestly vocations come from large families. Pope Pius XII highlighted this interrelationship, saying, I quote him from the same words he spoke to large families, with good reason. It has often been pointed out that large families have been in the forefront as the cradles of saints. We might cite, among others, the family of St. Louis, the King of France, made up of 10 children, that of St. Catherine of Siena, who came from a family of 25 children, St. Robert Bellarmine, from a family of 12, St. Pius X, from a family of 10. Every vocation is a secret of providence, but these cases prove that a large number of children does not prevent parents from giving them an outstanding and perfect upbringing, and they show that the number does not work out to the disadvantage of their quality with regard to either physical or spiritual values. So Pope Pius XII. The supernatural spirit of love and of self-sacrifice of the mother, and oftentimes of the mother of a large family, is the very foundation of a priestly vocation and of the fruitfulness of the priestly life of her son. The following moving example illustrates this truth in an impressive manner. In the city of Zaborze in Upper Silesia, in Poland, is a grave which is frequently visited by pilgrims. Above the grave rises a Lourdes grotto. Today is the day of Lourdes. At the foot of the statue of the Immaculate Conception of Lourdes, in a little glass case, lies a myrtle wreath Here is the story of the myrtle wreath. A priest is buried in the grave at the foot of the grotto. He was the youngest of 10 children. As a young man, he worked very hard to earn enough money to study for the priesthood, because his parents were poor. After his ordination, he went as a missionary to India, where he worked for many years. When he died, they buried him in his hometown of Zaborze in Poland, and they erected a grotto of Our Lady of Lourdes above his tomb, because he had always fostered a special devotion to Mary Immaculate. Sometime after the burial of this zealous priest, a little box was found among his possessions with a note pasted upon it, "To be opened after my death." The box contained a myrtle wreath and this note: "This is my mother's bridal wreath. I have carried it with me to various countries on my journeys over land and sea, in memory of that sacred moment when my mother vowed not only fidelity but also uprightness at the altar of God. She has kept that vow. She had the courage to have me after the 9th child. Next to God, I owe her my life and my vocation to the priesthood. If she had not wanted me, I would not have become a priest and thus missionary. I was the 10th child. I would not have been able to work for the salvation of souls. Place this wreath of my mother's bridal wreath into my grave. This I ask of the one who finds it." So was the note. When they found the wreath, the grave had already been closed. So they placed it at the foot of the statue of Our Lady of Lourdes, to whom he dedicated his life. As another example, we could mention the mother of St. Pius X, Margherita Sanson. She raised up 10 children. She taught them to pray first thing in the morning, communicate with God throughout the day, and to end each day with prayer, bringing the entire family together for an examination of conscience every evening. The well-known story of the wedding ring of his mother remains always inspiring. Following her son's episcopal ordination and placement in Mantova, the future Pope Pius X visited his old mother to thank her. After kissing his episcopal ring, she showed him her wedding ring and said, "Your ring is very beautiful, Giuseppe, but you would not have it if I did not wear this my ring." I know the following story. A priest came to the mother of a priest to congratulate her with the episcopal nomination of her son. To this congratulation, the mother replied, "This does not mean this much for me. The most important thing is that my son remain always faithful to Jesus." To remain faithful to Jesus means to remain faithful to all of his commandments, to all of his divine teachings, and to prefer temporal disadvantages and disdain, even on the part of ecclesiastical persons, rather than to make compromises regarding the teaching and the observance of Christ's commandments and teachings. When parents impart to their children a truly Catholic education in faith, they lay the foundation of the faith of future priests and of future bishops. Usually, the uncompromising and lifelong fidelity to the integrity of the Catholic faith on behalf of a priest or of a bishop is a fruit of the education which he got in his family from his father or from his mother, from both, or from his grandparents. The truth which says that the family is the original place of the beauty of the Catholic faith, we can see also in the following edifying witness in the autobiography of Saint Therese of the Infant Jesus. I quote, she wrote in her book, The Story of a Soul, the big feasts did not come along so often, but there was one most dear feast to me, and it came every week, Sunday, our Lord's own day, a wonderful day, a day of rest. We all went to the High Mass, and when it was time for the sermon, I remember we had to leave our place because it was so far away from the pulpit, and to go all up the nave to find places near the pulpit. There were no microphones in those times. I was far too interested in what the priest was saying. The first sermon I really understood was one of our Lord's Passion, and I was very much moved by it. That was when I was 5.5, and from then on I could take in and appreciate all that was said. I would really listen, but I am afraid I kept my eyes on my father far more than on the preacher, because I could read such a lot in the noble face of my father. Sometimes his eyes would fill with tears he could not keep back. And when he was listening to the eternal truth of the preacher, my father seemed to be already in another world, and no longer in this world. He was then a long way from his journey's end, however. Long, sad years had yet to pass before he opened his eyes on heaven's loveliness, and Jesus wiped away his faithful servant's tears. So, Saint Therese of Infant Jesus, from her book, Story of a Soul. In those times, in the 19th century, the Eucharistic liturgy was not celebrated in the vernacular, and the liturgy was without explanatory remarks and commentaries. However, Saint Therese of the Infant Jesus and her father, Saint Louis Martin, had a very intense, active participation in the liturgy of the Holy Mass, and very active participation. Even he was moved to tears. This is very active participation. Undoubtedly, their participation in the liturgy was more active. That means more conscious, attentive, and pious than that of many Catholics in our days, where the liturgy is celebrated entirely in vernacular language, and where active participation is sometimes realized in only playing an exterior liturgical role, this is against the prescription of the Second Vatican Council. Recently, Cardinal Robert Sarah, the prefect of the Congregation of Divine Worship, made the following apt observation on this issue. I quote the Cardinal. Most of the faithful, including priests and bishops, do not know this liturgical teaching of the Council. As Benedict XVI often emphasized, at the root of the liturgy is adoration, and therefore God. Hence, it is necessary to recognize that the serious, profound crisis that has affected the liturgy and the Church itself since the Council is due to the fact that its center is no longer God and the adoration of Him, but rather man and their alleged ability to do something, to keep themselves busy during the Eucharistic celebration. So, Cardinal Sarah, the present situation of the world and partly of the life of many Catholics and ministers of the Church could be characterized as a great apostasy. An apostasy from the faith in the true divinity of Christ, an apostasy from the faith in the unique way of salvation through Christ only, an apostasy from the faith in the perennial validity of the divine commandments. Such an apostasy signifies ultimately to renounce Christ and to accept the spirit of the world. Recently, the same Cardinal Sarah made the following striking statement on the real current spiritual situation inside the Church. I quote Cardinal Sarah. Political Europe is rebuked for abandoning or denying its Christian roots. But the first to have abandoned her Christian roots and past is indisputably the post-conciliar Catholic Church. While more and more voices of high-ranking prelates stubbornly affirm obvious doctrinal, moral, and liturgical errors that have been condemned 100 times, and these high-ranking prelates work to demolish the little faith remaining in the people of God, while the bark of the Church furrows the stormy sea of this decadent world, and the waves crash down on the ship, so that it is already filling with water. A growing number of church leaders today shout, "Everything is just fine, my lady." So, Cardinal Sarah, these were his words. I am very agreeing with his words. These words reflect perfectly the analysis of the modern world made by St. Pius X already 100 years ago. I quote Pius X. The great movement of apostasy being organized in every country for the establishment of a one world church. You hear, one world church. An expression of Pius X 100 years ago already. I repeat, a great movement is being organized in every country for the establishment of one world church, which shall have neither dogmas nor hierarchy, neither discipline for the mind, nor curb for the passions, and which, under the pretext of freedom and human dignity, would bring back to the world the reign of legalized cunning and force, and the oppression of the weak, and of all those who toil and suffer. Indeed, the true friends of the people are neither revolutionaries nor innovators, but they are traditionalists. Pius X, 100 years ago. The Catholic family is the original place of the experience of the beauty of the Catholic faith. The Catholic family represents the first bulwark against the current great apostasy. The two most efficient weapons against the modern apostasy outside and inside the life of the Church are the purity and integrity of the faith and the chastity of life. These two weapons. The admonition which St. Louis, King of France, left to his son remains always valid. I quote him, "My dearest son, my first instruction is that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength. Without these, there is no salvation. Keep yourself, my son, from everything that you know displeases God, that is to say, from every mortal sin. You should permit yourself to be tormented by every kind of martyrdom before you would allow yourself to commit a mortal sin. Work to remove all sin from your land, particularly blasphemies and heresies." So the words of St. Louis, King of France, to his son. Once a member of an anti-Christian movement, who later converted to the Catholic Church, said to Father Matteo Crowley, the apostle of the enthronement of the Sacred Heart, the following words, I quote, "We have only one goal in mind, the anti-Christian movement. And this is to de-Christianize the family. We leave to the Catholics gladly the churches, the chapels, the cathedrals. For us, it is enough to have the family in order to corrupt society. If we have control over the family, our victory over the church is guaranteed." So this member of an anti-Christian movement professed this. True Catholic families and desirably large families will strengthen the Church of our days with the beauty of the Catholic faith. From that faith will come out new Catholic fathers and mothers, and from them there will come out a new generation of zealous priests and also good bishops in the future. Of course, where good bishops have to come out? They have to come out from Catholic families. And these priests and bishops who will be ready to give their life for Christ and for the salvation of souls. The Christianity was born out of the family, the Holy Family, so that the family may be born again out of the Christianity. The first fruit of the redemption is the Holy Family, just as the first blessing of the Creator was given to the family. Indeed, what the current world and the Church mostly need are true Catholic families, the original places of the beauty of the Catholic faith. Thank you for your attention.
Very grateful to His Excellency for a talk which indeed is very apt here today, as we have lots and lots of children. It's wonderful. Big families, good families, but also just to inspire. I was speaking recently actually with another cleric of the church who said, if we look at what's happening in the church, it can be depressing sometimes. Most of the time nowadays. But as His Excellency said, as we sat down here after the Mass, he said, here's the future of the Church. And so if we continue to live out the faith, to love the traditions which have been passed on to us, indeed, we'll have those future priests, bishops, holy fathers, holy mothers, and families. His Excellency is open to a few questions, if you would like to ask a few questions. So I would just ask that once everyone sits, then just to stand up, state your question, try to do it as clearly as you can, and then he'll kind of ask you and call upon you and answer it. So just a few questions. We won't go on forever.
So maybe the questions should be very short. Do not make a statement here, but only short questions, very short. Okay.
I don't know.
Can you guide?
Yes, so just here.
Your Excellency, I was hoping you could help us figure out how to defend Blessed Pius IX. And speaking of parental rights, the case of Edgardo Mortara, there was the Jewish boy who was baptized when he was an infant, and he was raised by Blessed Pius IX. The world thinks this is horrible. But how do you help us defend Blessed Pius IX in that case?
This is a historical case of the 19th century. A Jewish child, it was baptized, and I don't know exactly all the historical circumstances, but in any case he was as a child baptized, and then after he was raised as a Catholic, and then when his parents appeared, he was first in a orphan, but then the real parents appeared, Jewish parents, and they started to ask back the child to educate him in Jewish faith, the Jewish religion. But Pius IX said no. He was educated as a Christian. I cannot give you back this child. And even so, the boy was convicted in the Christian faith. And so, I think here, in this case, the Pope Pius IX demonstrated that the salvation of the soul, the eternal life, has more value than the short earthly life. The values are completely different, and so the faith is the biggest value and the richness which we can give a human being, and the true Catholic faith.
If you had to name one, there seems to be a big push to a secular society. Could you name one thing that you could attribute to that movement and away from religious life and freedom? You know what I'm trying to say?
The biggest factor of secular to push away from religion. He's saying, is there one factor that you think is the most?
Yes, the secularism is already started in some way with the Protestant Revolution, with Martin Luther, who his main idea is the subjectivism. So the most important is you decide yourself so about the truth, but we have to receive the truth by God. This is the objective reality. And then with the Reformation, the Protestant, I say deformation, not Reformation. It was not Reformation, it was a deformation, and started de-secularism, especially then with the French Revolution, with the Freemason influence in the society of Europe and here in America, to separate, to eliminate God from society. This is secularism. And so to make us again pagans, or to rise human being to be God, not so to when we will eliminate God and Christ from the society will become barbarian. So we are living now in a barbarian society which almost never have been, with the mass genocide of innocent children. So the only return, we have to return God to the society and Christ. This is the only solution for the health of the society.
Back here.
Yes, hi. Your Excellency. How do I explain to young college students the desire to follow the traditional Catholic Church? Because I've been to Temple Union Center. It's kind of hard to explain to them the desire to follow the traditional Mass, etc. I recommend I go back talking to them.
Yes, the truth is itself attracts, because the truth is beautiful, and all beauty attracts. When you see something beautiful in nature, countryside, so it is pleasing to everybody. So you have to present the beauty of the truth, to explain, to show the truth, because as I told already, there is ignorance, quite a big deal of ignorance of truth. And so we have to give, especially young people, to communicate them the content, concrete, the truth of Catholic faith, the truth and the liturgy. And then this truth will attract them.
We'll go back here first.
Can you louder?
What do you think about what God is calling people to do in cases when families are suffering and some cases broken, and for the children as a family? Thank you.
So just how does God what graces will He give to broken families and those children that are in broken families?
Yes, broken families, this is of course a very spread reality in our society, in our time. But I think that we have, those who suffer in a broken family have to accept this in the spirit of faith. It's impossible without faith. People can despair. But when we have faith in Christ, in Jesus, and embrace even this cross of a broken family as a cross, with faith, with confidence, with trust, it will bring us always blessings, even in suffering. And we have to pray and to suffer for this part, the other part of family broken away, that they may be saved their souls for heaven. At least when they will die, that they will die reconciled with God. Then we have already made really a good work in our life. So it is we have to embrace this with faith. Yes.
just take a couple more questions, then we'll let him go. So I think there was one at the front here that
Yes, Your Excellency. I understand that your family background included persecution, gulags, and underground church. And as we potentially face persecution, what was it in your family that you were able to cling to, that grounded you to, that your parents were able to produce somebody who became a bishop?
Yes, it is, it is substantially the Catholic faith, the simple, the profound and simple and pure integral Catholic faith, which I received. Even, I would say, I received this with mother's milk. It is for me the greatest grace of my life. I consider that I received the Catholic faith, the true Catholic faith with mother's milk. I consider this greater than the priesthood and than the episcopacy. Greater. What will help me, the priesthood and to be a bishop, when I have not a deep faith? Nothing. But when I have a deep faith, the true Catholic faith, this is the richness. And it is like a soil. So the grandparents were already deeply Catholics, and the great-grandparents also, in my case. So I was growing up in a soil deeply Catholic, and therefore I stress today the importance of Catholic families. And then you transmit these, and then you transmit these to your grandchildren, grandchildren. So in this way was built up the European Catholic society more than 1,000 years, and produced all these beautiful Catholic culture. So we have to, again, to go this way.
Last, just behind us.
Our parish priest at a very small town was New York, would often travel to India, and he would come back and comment how very holy and pious some people there were in that. And just going back to what you said, there was a quote, and I don't remember which one you said, but you said that many souls are in hell because of their ignorance. Now, as a Catholic, I've always been taught that, well, if you've brought to the truth of it, then you're really in trouble if you walk away from it. But I also am taught that, I think the Catechism also says that if you are ignorant of a sin or whatever, of the faith, you're kind of excused. So why would those people then?
Yes, it is a question I was awaiting this question. Yes, we have to explain the ignorance, but culpable. How do you say? Culpable. You know, an ignorance where you are responsible for the ignorance. Those people who are ignorant, but they are innocent, they have no responsibility because they were not taught. They know nothing. They know nothing. But when you have neglected this knowledge, really, this sinfully, in a sinful manner, the ignorance, then you are responsible for this, of course. This, Mr. Maybe.
You want to do? Okay.
Wie geht's Ihnen?
Danke, gut.
Deine Excellency. Are you familiar with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Atlantic Charter? I just read a book on de Gaulle. And in the Atlantic Charter, which Roosevelt signed and Churchill signed, to hit on what you said about the de-Christianization of society, in the Atlantic Charter they said when we take over the world, there will be no more missionary work in Asia and Africa. And President de Gaulle would not go along with it. He wouldn't sign it. Roosevelt lost his temper and he said, you know, you didn't get one vote. But de Gaulle said, yes, but I am the Joan of Arc of France. And Roosevelt said to Churchill, de Gaulle thinks he's Joan of Arc. And Churchill said, good, let's get some Catholic bishops to burn him.
Well, you know that the powers of the enemies of Christ, Satan, is always working against Christ and against the church, and he will do this until the end of the time. So we will always live in a time of some kind of the attacks of the enemies of Satan, I mean, who will try to destroy the church. And therefore Christ said to Peter, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. So they will try to do this during the entire history. And so therefore we have not to sleep, but to be vigilant and all together, and to pray and to be vigilant and to be a militant church. This is our task also, to fight not against flesh and blood, but against the evil spirits, against the heresies, against the untruth. So we have to be in some way good soldiers of Christ, and this is our vocation also together. And so we are convinced that we are already in the team of the winners, always, because Christ is in our team, and He is the winner. Christus vincit, Christus regnat, Christus imperat.
Again, thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see so many faces here today at the parish. His Excellency will give us a blessing in just a moment, and after that you'll have a brief chance to say hello perhaps as he passes by, but he does need to have a little rest. He has another appointment. Actually, he's going to the Bishop of the Diocese has asked to speak with him, which is a wonderful blessing as well. It's always wonderful when the episcopacy, the bishops who are trying to maintain the truth, have that brotherhood, and they can know that there's others working with them. And so we'll just ask now for His Excellency's blessing.
I would put the intention for all your intentions which you have, for all the sufferings. But may these sufferings be blessed and produce fruits. And especially, I will give these blessings that from this community and this present here, God will give us many good holy priests also. There are some future maybe priests. Dominus vobiscum. Et benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maneat semper. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop.
Yes.
Christus regna, Christus imperat, Christus vincit, Christus regna, Christus imperat, Christus vincit, Christus regna.